Reba, you got to go to
I
Sight
did.
and Sound.
And you were jealous.
Oh my goodness. I have never been. Heard so many good things about
Yes.
it. How was it?
It was amazing. Hi, I'm Reba Hervis, Artistic Director at Overshadowed Theatrical Productions, with my co-host, Rebecca Leland. Welcome to this week's episode from the Wings. When I first began Overshadowed, the reason, honestly, I started it was because of Sight and Sound.
Wow.
So I had a friend who stopped me in the hall of school one day and said, "Oh my goodness, I just had a vacation. Have you ever been to Sight and Sound Theater?" And I said, "No, what is it?" And she said, "Reba, we looked and we saw cars with license plates on it from all over the United States, all filled to come in to this theater to see a production where their hashtag phrase is bringing the Bible to life." And honestly, Rebecca, it was almost like I felt like God put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Reba, you've always had the dream to start a Christian theater. You are not getting any younger." So
the Lord do be talking to us.
Yeah,
like that
no,
sometimes.
right?
He's honest.
You're not getting any younger, girl. So go do it.
Wow.
And one of the things that I thought about is like if people will go in the middle of a cornfield in Pennsylvania, why wouldn't they come to Chicago
largest city,
to see biblical dramas? But I'm telling you that the biggest problem with this whole story is that I'd never been there. And I've been for 20 years telling people I want to be like Sight and Sound, but yet I've never been there in person. I've only watched their DVDs, watched clips on their website, because I have a former intern, CJ, who now works as part of their dresser costume team at Sight and Sound. And so I said, if I decide to bring my board at Overshadowed and bring them to Branson, will you give us a backstage tour? And so that's what we did. We went to see their new production of Queen Esther, which it is
amazing,
powerful. It is so good. And the idea that God once again chose a woman that did a job that a man could not have done. Now, we sat about halfway back, so I don't know what it would be like to sit way down at the beginning, at the front. That might be a little bit harder. And then once I heard the story about a horse falling off the stage, it kind of scared me about like...
we're going to be halfway back.
We're going to go halfway back. Then I don't have to worry about it. I don't think I would sit on the aisle. I mean... And you have to know that that's possible, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody got hurt. But now that I've heard this story, I don't think I need to sit in the front. One of the things that's really interesting is that Sight and Sound was started by an artist. And so he made a slideshow presentation, played it in his barn. This is in the middle of a cornfield in Pennsylvania, had music to it. And so people would come. He'd put a sign out on the side of the road and people would come to see this. And he was such a great artist that people,
word spread.
Word spread, and people came, and that's kind of how it started. And then he would add the dialogue to it and things like that and make a presentation. So everything is very artistic. And so as you're there, you're seeing this first layer of set in a city, in a village that you're looking around. And then you notice that there's houses behind that and houses behind that. And so I think the layers of what was happening was also really breathtaking for me as a director, because there's something going on all the time. And so you might be focused on this scene over here, but over here in the third house back, a woman is taking out her blankets and, shaking them and stuff. I mean, it was
immersive.
Yes. Yeah. The whole thing. It was really inspiring. CJ talks a little bit about the costume rooms and what she has to do. And so for each one of the people, they actually have a place that they have to go. And so she'll say, if you are Daniel, then you have to go to 1B. And then after you get done with that scene, your next place to change your costumes will be at, grid G or whatever. And so she has to do this whole worksheet of where the people have to go and where the costumes are. And then the dressers have to make sure that they are where the people need help. The whole thing is the biggest mathematical thing I have ever seen in my life. And that's what we started with, is like seeing that costume thing. And I was just like, oh my gosh,
There's
it's like
so much.
our people have it so easy. And I think our things
are you right?
Yes, right.
Oh
I think
word.
our stuff sometimes is very complicated and we're having to figure out how we're going to get things done. But I think that it's interesting because we, in a normal production, we're combined to this little space. And so they literally cannot get distracted because they are thinking, I have, again, going back to this amount of time, I have 12 seconds to get off, change my hat garment, and come in, in that door over there instead of this door. So it's the time, the costume change, and then a lot of the people that I guess we would consider ensemble, but they all play multiple parts.
Wow.
And so just like we've been talking about swings and
standbys.
understudies and standbys and all that, they literally in the afternoon may play one part and then in the evening may play a different part. But what's amazing about that is that might mean that they have to go on a completely different track because of who they are. So just like we talked about from it being one side of the theater to here, that means that's the space they have to cover. So if normally they're coming out this door over here, then all of a sudden at nighttime, they might be coming in the back. And so they have to memorize a whole different pathway of where they have to go so that they're not bumping into people. And then they might also sing a whole different part. So they might be
on stage.
baritone in the afternoon, but a tenor in the evening. So these people are brilliant. The other thing is the enormity of the set pieces. So when I'm looking, she showed us a little bit of the back and the wheels and how they move and what they have to do and all the safety mechanisms they have in place. Wow. So there's emergency stops that if something fails and it gets to the point that they can just pull the plug and then everything stops.
Wow.
And so that she talked a little bit about that. And she also talked about like the safety mechanisms before you get to that. So like where everything needs to be, where the people need to be, how many callers. So it's like it might be a caller here and then a stage manager over there and somebody else over here. And so they're all looking so they can make sure that nothing is in the way because it literally, these wheels can cut your foot off. I mean, it's so...
This is big.
Huge. I mean, it'd have to be. You were moving a village. The basement is so incredibly big that they line up everything in the order that it's supposed to go on before the show starts so that it can they get it on the lift and then when it comes back down, it goes off the other way.
And they push the next thing.
And then they push the next thing in it. I mean, it's just so brilliant. And so God has blessed them so much. But they're also blessing us because of it, because they are having such a ministry to not only the fans of Overshadowed who got to go do it, but generations of Christians who are getting to go and hear and see the Bible come to life.
So when did they actually begin?
In 1976. So the year after I graduated from high school. It's been around that long.
Generations.
Yeah. One of the things that, his barn burned down or his barn, and he had another theater and it burned down, and that's what actually gave him the money to build a bigger, better theater.
Wow.
So I always think that's a really interesting story too. But God, out of the ashes created something really great. So not that I feel like people should
burn down their ashes and get the insurance money.
That's not a good plan, but shows you that God can take ashes and make something beautiful.
Amen.
So CJ was wonderful. So thank you again, CJ, for just being so kind to us and showing us everything. We loved every moment of it. They have one of the things they do is they use animals too. So live animals. And so hearing stories about, what they're not allowed to do, because you can't really make friends with the animals in a way that goes outside the norm. So they have to actually get trained of how to treat the animals too. Wow. Because let's say I'm playing Esther. And when I go on, I always see my horse and I always bring him a carrot because I always really like it. And then, we have this bonding moment and I get on my horse and I go ride. But then I do that for 3 months. And now all of a sudden you come in and you're playing Esther and you don't give the horse a carrot.
Something
then
crazy could happen.
yeah, or the horse is like, I'm not doing this. I need my carrot, because you've without doing it intentionally, you have trained him
Wow,
to
they're
expect the
actors.
character, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So hearing that was really
Something
interesting,
you
and
never thought.
and I guess one time somebody taught the birds bad words or something, and so that was really interesting to hear. They're like, oh yeah, we got to break the habit of saying this, because this again is the
stage.
Bible coming to life, right? So I thought hearing those kind of stories was really great and interesting too.
Wow.
My favorite part of the story, honestly, is very simply the idea that God uses women. It's a story that I love, because I think a lot of times we as women are made to not feel that we have worth, but yet God continues to give it to us by the fact that Mary, a virgin, sorry, that Mary, a virgin, was chosen and handpicked by God to be the mother of Jesus. We don't hear a lot about Joseph, but Mary is special.
Yeah.
Ruth is special.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus had to come from her line.
Yeah.
And I think that this is another story that we don't really take a lot of time to think about, is the fact that if it had not been for Esther, God's people would have potentially been all killed off.
Yeah.
But she saved a nation.
Yep.
And there's a lot of power in the telling of that story. And it's not something that I necessarily needed to hear, but it was so good to hear it. They just did it in a really beautiful way. So I can understand why this is a popular story for them. They're way sold out. So
wow.
I think
love that.
I think I heard that they held it. I think they said they were playing it for another year.
Wow, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can go see it.
Yeah.
So if anyone interested, what are the details?
Okay, so you can just go on their website, Sight and Sound, I think it's .com, and there are two locations. You can go to Pennsylvania or Branson, but if you want to see Queen Esther, you need to go to Branson. And there's a lot of hotels that are right there. If you go when it's warm, there's a lot of things to do in Branson. It's definitely a tourist trap kind of place.
Yeah.
But the people are so super, super nice. Sight and Sound, thanks for being an inspiration to all of us and the people in that community. Thank you for being so kind and working for the cause like you do. We really appreciated it.
And if you don't have time to drive all the way out to Missouri or Pennsylvania, you can come to Medina, Illinois to see
Singing in the Rain. We've got a fantastic cast, and everybody I've shown the tap dancing numbers to right now have been like, oh my goodness, I'm blown away. And then the one after that is going to be a biblical production, well, a Christian production. It's The Devil and Daniel Webster.
I'm so excited.
And it is all about a man who wants more and more and more, so much that he is willing to sacrifice his soul for it. And you have to see what happens.
Theater is important. Biblical theater is even more important.
100%.
Yeah, it changes lives. So until next time, this is just me
And me.
talking to you
From the wings.